Hello everyone and welcome back to this month's edition of BookKey. In BookKey, we bring to you top book recommendations under 5 different categories that cater to the tastes of a large audience. These categories are Spotlight, where we discuss recently published books that are informative as well as insightful.
Hidden Gem, where we unravel to you rare gem of books lost in the annals of time.
The Classic Vault, where we look at the evergreen classics which never lose relevance. The Untold, where we lift the wheel on lesser-known stories and facts about popular books and authors. Top 5, where we suggest to you 5 of the best reading choices from the current bestsellers. Today, the amount of data that is generated by both humans and machines far outpaces humans' ability to absorb, interpret, and make complex decisions based on that data. Artificial intelligence forms the basis for all computer learning and is the future of all complex decision making. AI is poised to have a profound impact on the society, which necessitates us to start thinking about all the underlying implications. Our first recommendation under the section Spotlight features a compelling book that addresses this topic. Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power by Rajiv Malhotra is a very pertinent read for the times we live in, as it provides interesting insights on what artificial intelligence is doing to our nation and how it will affect us in the future.
Published by Rupa Publications India, the book unravels the dangers of our over-reliance on technology.
It has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 4.6 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The book argues that this AI-driven revolution will have an unequal impact on different segments of humanity. There will be new winners and losers, new haves and have-nots, resulting in an unprecedented concentration of wealth and power. Here is an excerpt of the book to give you an idea. The AI-based concentration of power has taken on a terrifying new aspect. When we think of global power, countries like the US, China, and Russia readily come to mind. But today, private companies are accumulating immense power based on their ability to leverage AI and big data as tools to influence, manipulate, and even control the minds of people. Some of these private companies may soon become more powerful than many nation-states, but the shift will not be obvious. They will not fly a flag or manage a currency, although some are attempting to launch their own cryptocurrency, and they will not wield military power, at least not directly. However, their unprecedented knowledge of people and things around the world, coupled with their ability to disrupt and alter the physical world and manipulate people's choices, will lead to a new nexus of power. Such companies will decide who will and who will not be given access to this new form of power and on what terms. The book has 2 parts to it. The first is Algorithm versus Being, and the second is Battleground for India. 4 battlegrounds are discussed in part 1. The battle for job, the battle for world domination, the battle for agency, and the battle for self. The final battle, the battle for India, constitutes part 2 of the book, which comprises the remaining chapters. Before launching compelling arguments for each battleground, Malhotra provides an excellent overview of AI technology. He first discusses fundamental advances such as machine learning, data analytics, and AI gadgets. Next, he discusses AI applications ranging from healthcare and agriculture to education, military, and financial services. Then, he touches upon the controversial issues surrounding AI, such as unfairness, lack of accountability, lack of transparency, and questionable ethics. The remarkable aspect of this is its ready accessibility to non-technical audience who have no familiarity with AI. This is a striking aspect of the entire book. The book also raises troubling and thought-provoking questions such as, is the world headed towards digital colonization by USA and China? Will depopulation become eventually unavoidable? Artificial intelligence and the future of power is a wake-up call to action, compelling public intellectuals to be better informed and more engaged. It educates the social segments most at risk and wants them to demand a seat at the table where policies on artificial intelligence are being formulated. Rajiv Malhotra is an internationally acclaimed author and public intellectual. He combines his background in physics and computer science with his quarter-century of path-breaking research on India's historical and future place in the world.
As the founder of Princeton-based Infinity Foundation, he continues to change the global discourse with new and innovative paradigms.
Rajiv Malhotra's work covers a broad spectrum including mind sciences, civilizations, geopolitics, and the future of India. The cost of Kindle edition is Rs 513. Our second recommendation under this section is Weapons of Mass Destruction: How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy by Cathy O'Neil. 4.5 stars on Amazon and 3.9 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, published by Penguin. In this illuminating book, long listed for National Book Awards, Cathy O'Neil, one of the first champions of algorithmic accountability, sounds an alarm on the mathematical models that pervade modern life and threaten to rip apart our social fabric. With Facebook's new trending topics, algorithm and data-driven policing in the news, the book is certainly a timely read. The Financial Times calls this book a manual for the 21st century citizen, stating that the book is accessible, refreshingly critical, and feels relevant and urgent. We live in the age of algorithms, with mathematical models making most of the decisions that affect our lives. In theory, this should lead to greater fairness. Everyone is judged according to the same rules, and bias is eliminated. And yet, as Cathy O'Neil reveals, the opposite is true. The models being used today are opaque, unregulated, and incontestable, even when they are wrong. Most troubling part is they reinforce discrimination. Tracing the arc of a person's life, O'Neil exposes the black box models that shape our future, both as individuals and as a society. These weapons of mass destruction pose teachers and students, sort CVs, grant or deny loans, evaluate workers, target voters, and monitor our health. O'Neil calls on model developers to take more responsibility for their algorithms and on policymakers to regulate their use. But in the end, it's up to us to become savvier about these models that govern our lives. Cathy O'Neil is a data scientist and has earned a PhD in mathematics from Harvard and has taught at Barnard College before moving into the private sector, where she worked for the hedge fund D.E. Shaw. She then worked as a data scientist at various startups, building models that predict people's purchases and clicks. O'Neil started the LEAD program in data journalism at Columbia and is the author of Doing Data Science. Cost of the Kindle edition is Rs 248. In our second section, The Hidden Gem, this month we have a deeply disturbing yet pertinent and informative book, Farewell Kabul, From Afghanistan to a More Dangerous World by Christina Lamb. 4.6 stars on Amazon and 4.5 on Goodreads, published by William Collins. From the award-winning co-author of I Am Malala, this book asks just how the might of NATO, with 48 countries and 140,000 troops on the ground, failed to defeat a group of religious students and farmers. How did it go so wrong? 27 years ago, Christina Lamb left Britain to become a journalist in Pakistan. She crossed the Hindu Kush into Afghanistan with Mujahideen fighting the Russians and fell unequivocally in love with this fierce country, a relationship which has dominated her adult life. Since 2001, Lamb has watched the incredulity as the West fought a war with its hands tied, committed too little too late, failed to understand local dynamics, and turned a blind eye as their Taliban enemy was helped by their ally Pakistan. Farewell Kabul tells how success was turned into defeat in the longest war fought by the United States in its history. It has been a fiasco which has left Afghanistan, still one of the poorest nations on earth, the Taliban undefeated, and nuclear-armed Pakistan perhaps the most dangerous place on earth. With unparalleled access to all key decision-makers in Afghanistan, Pakistan, London and Washington, from heads of state and generals as well as soldiers on the ground, Farewell Kabul tells how this happened. This deeply personal book not only shows the human cost of political failure, but explains how short-sighted encouragement of jihadis to fight the Russians, followed by prosecution of ill-thought-out wars, has resulted in the spread of terrorism throughout the Islamic world. Farewell Kabul will help its readers understand Afghanistan a little better, or at least give them a glimpse of its deepest fault lines. Like a journey through the war-torn country itself, Land's 640-page hidden gem may take some time to get through, but it ends up being more rewarding than one could have ever imagined. Christina Lamb is currently the Sunday Times foreign correspondent. Christina was named Foreign Correspondent of the Year in 2007 British Press Awards. In 2009, she was awarded the prestigious Prix Bayou Calvados for her reporting from Afghanistan. Named Foreign Correspondent of the Year 4 times, she is the author of several best-selling books including I Am Malala, co-authored with Malala Yousafzai. Cost of the Kindle edition is ₹390. In our third section, The Plastic Vault, the first book that we recommend is the famous bestseller India Unbound, From Independence to the Global Information Age by Gurcharan Das, 4.4 stars on Amazon and 4.1 on Goodreads. It is published by Penguin Books India. Through an autobiographical lens, this book seeks to explain why India's economy stagnated for so long before finally picking up in the recent years. The author begins with Nehru's mixed economy, which he argues achieved democracy but ignored entrepreneurship and competition, resulting in an absence of industrial development. He then continues through the economic reforms of 1991 under Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, whom he labels a reluctant liberalizer, demonstrating how India has abandoned state-directed industrialization and finally become a free market democracy with a burgeoning middle class. He also points out how India's late entry into the international economy continues to hamper its growth, as compared to China, who also entered late and despite having a lower per capita income than India did in the mid-60s, today boasts of one twice as large of India. Nevertheless, Das remains optimistic that the new India is increasingly one of competition and decentralization, particularly because of the internet and the boom in software entrepreneurship. Defining and exploring the new mindset of the nation, India Unbound is the perfect introduction to contemporary India. By juxtaposing his personal story with India's economic journey, Das avoids abstractions and focuses on the particular individuals who were leading India into trouble with its mixed economy. This may be the first book to ask why America's leading economists were so wrong in their policy advice for India in the 1950s and 60s. The Business Week lauds the book as one of the most readable and insightful books to appear on India's tortuous economic path since shaking off British rule. An international bestseller, India Unbound is a quiet earthquake, according to The Guardian, and available in 17 languages and is filmed by BBC. Gurcharan Das studied philosophy at Harvard University and later attended Harvard Business School, where he is featured in 3 case studies. After heading Procter & Gamble India and Southeast Asia, he became the Managing Director Procter & Gamble Worldwide for Strategic Planning. At 50, he took early retirement to become a full-time writer. He writes a regular column for 5 Indian newspapers, including the Times of India, and contributes to the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, Foreign Affairs, and the New York Times. The cost of the Kindle edition is ₹178.
The next book under this section we recommend Why Nations Fail, The Origins of Power, Prosperity and Poverty by Daron Acemoglu and James A. Robinson.
The book has 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 4.1 on Goodreads and is published by Profile Books. Shortlisted for the Financial Times and Goldman Sachs Business Book of the Year Award 2012, the book is engagingly written and primarily aims to address an elusive question that has stumped the experts for centuries.
Why are some nations rich and others poor, divided by wealth and poverty, health and sickness, food and famine? Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson conclusively show that it is man-made political and economic institutions that underlie economic success, or lack of it.
Korea, to take just one of their fascinating examples, is a remarkably homogeneous nation. Yet the people of North Korea are amongst the poorest on the earth, while their brothers and sisters in South Korea are amongst the richest. The South forged a society that created incentives, rewarded innovation, and allowed everyone to participate in economic opportunities. The economic success thus heard was sustained because the government became accountable and responsive to its citizens and the great mass of people.
Sadly, the people of the North have endured decades of famine, political repression, and very different economic institutions, with no end in sight.
The differences between the Koreas are due to the politics that created these completely different institutional trajectories.
Based on 15 years of original research, Deron and James marshal extraordinary historical evidence from the Roman Empire, the Mayan city-states, medieval Venice, the Soviet Union, Latin America, England, Europe, the United States, and Africa to build a new theory of political economy with great relevance for the big questions of today, including:
will China, with an authoritarian growth regime, continue to grow at historically high speed and overwhelm the West? Are America's best days behind it? Are we moving from a virtuous cycle in which efforts by elites to aggrandize power are resisted to a vicious one that enriches and empowers a small minority? What is the most effective way to help move billions of people from the rut of poverty to prosperity?
Do we need more philanthropy from the wealthy nations of the West, or need to apply the learnings from the hard-won lessons of Devon and James' breakthrough ideas on the interplay between inclusive political and economic institutions? Deron Acemoglu is the Elizabeth and James Killian Professor of Economics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
In 2005, he won the prestigious Joan Bates Clark Medal, awarded to the best economist under 40. James A. Robinson, a political scientist and economist, is one of the 9 university professors at the University of Chicago. The cost of the Kindle edition is ₹466. In our next section titled The Untold, this month we bring to you one of the last year's bestsellers which is soon set to be released as Netflix original series. The book, Anxious People, is a soul-stirring and riveting book by the author of the record-breaking bestseller, A Man Called O, Frederick Backman. 4.5 stars on Amazon and 4.2 on Goodreads, published by Penguin. Anxious People is an ingeniously constructed story about the enduring power of friendship, forgiveness, and hope, the things that save us, even in the most anxious of times. What begins as an idiosyncratic book about a bank robbery gone terribly wrong unfolds into an astute and beautifully rendered character study of a random group of people who are thrown into a very stressful situation as the botched robbery suddenly turns into a hostage situation. Each character has a story that slowly unrolls, revealing a complicated, heartrending, tragic, hilarious, and interconnected truth. While the book has become widely popular bestseller, few would be aware of the backstory to what triggered the author to write this book. In fall 2017, something odd happened to Frederick Backman. He was scheduled to be at a book fair in Copenhagen, but as he puts it, suddenly nothing made sense. He took a break from book promotion and started therapy with a psychiatrist. Earlier, Backman had turned to therapy 15 years before, when he was shot in the leg during a robbery which left him on crutches and scared of everything. Backman has pulled from both of those moments for his book, Anxious People. What came from hitting the wall was wanting to write about anxiety, but not people in an extreme situation, but about normal people living with anxiety and trying to cope. He wanted to write about the feelings he himself had experienced, that sense of failure and futility that can happen regardless of success. Backman suffered rejection by multiple publishers in Sweden before A Man Called O became a runaway success. The book eventually sold 12 million copies globally. This book was also one of our top recommendations under the top 5 category in our last edition. Another quirky fact about Backman is that almost all of his books touch upon suicide, and in Anxious People, a man jumping off a bridge has a far-reaching effect. For Backman, who has struggled with anxiety as well as depression, this is personal. He states, I had a very close friend who ended his life when I was about 20 years old, and something like that never stops affecting you. Anxious people grapple with both mental health and parenting, but at its heart, it's about how we all are connected. The best-selling Swedish author, Fredrik Backman, is a master of writing delightful, insightful, soulful, character-driven narratives. He made his literary debut in 2012 with the golden sensation A Man Called O, now in development as a major motion picture starring Tom Hanks. Wickedly funny, touching, and wise, Fredrik Backman's novels are odysseys of the extraordinary man and woman, and stunningly moving tales of everyday courage. Fredrik Backman has written 6 highly acclaimed novels, 2 heartfelt novellas about life and love, and 1 non-fiction book about parenthood. His books have sold more than 13 million copies in 46 languages, and the Swedish film adaptation of A Man Called O was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. Cost of the Kindle edition is Rs. 350. Moving ahead to our last and final section, Top 5, we bring to you our picks from the Crossword and Amazon bestsellers across different categories. In non-fiction category, we have Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment by Danielle Kahneman, Olivier Sibony, and Cass Sunstein. 4.4 stars on Amazon and 3.7 on Goodreads. Number 2 in self-help for memory improvement. The book is written by an all-star team of psychologist and Nobel Prize winner Danielle Kahneman, former McKinsey partner and management professor Olivier Sibony, and productive legal scholar and behavioral economist Cass Sunstein.
The authors kick things off by distinguishing between bias, which is systematic deviations, and noise, which is random scatter.
The book digs deep into the details of unwanted variation, including its causes and components, how to measure it, and the interplay between noise and bias. The authors tackle why group versus individual decision makers can amplify noise and how guidelines, rules, and algorithms can reduce it.
And they provide a well-stocked toolbox to help decision makers identify and reduce system noise.
The book is published by William Collins, and the cost of Kindle edition is Rs. 315. The next book is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. 4.4 stars on Amazon, 4.3 on Goodreads, and number 2 bestseller in essays. As the title suggests, this book is about the way a person thinks and the way thoughts shape one's reality. It's a profound, inspiring, quick-reading book of under 50 pages that anyone can read in an hour or two. One of the most inspirational quotes from the book is, "A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein, and will continue to produce their kind." The author James Allen was a British philosophical writer and is known for his inspirational books and poetry, and as a pioneer of self-help movement. The book is published by Fingerprint Publishing. Cost of Kindle edition is Rs. 59. The next book is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. 4.6 stars on Amazon, 4.4 on Goodreads, and it is the Goodreads Choice 2016 winner. The book is a profoundly moving, exquisitely observed memoir of a young neurosurgeon faced with a terminal cancer diagnosis who attempts to answer the question, what makes a life worth living?
At the age of 36, on the verge of completing a decade's worth of training as a neurosurgeon, Paul Kalanithi was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Paul has chronicled his transformation from a naive medical student possessed, as he wrote, by the question of what, given that all organisms die, makes a virtuous and meaningful life, into a neurosurgeon at Stanford working in the brain, the most critical place for human identity, and finally into a patient and new father confronting his own mortality. It is unforgettable, life-affirming reflection on the challenge of facing death and on the relationship between a doctor and a patient from a brilliant writer who became both. Published by Vintage, Kindle edition is worth Rs. 325. Next on the list in the fiction category, we recommend The Origin by Dan Brown. 4.4 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 3.9 on Goodreads. The Origin is the fifth of Dan Brown's best-selling book starring Robert Langdon. Those who would have read The Da Vinci Code would remember. Langdon is professor of religious symbology at Harvard. With Origin, Brown's story explores the two existential questions. Where do we come from? Where are we headed? Protagonist and maverick scientist and researcher Edmund Kirsch, who happens to be a former student of Robert Langdon, has an important announcement to make. This announcement, according to him, has the power to not only shake but shatter the very foundations of modern-day religion. The grand reveal is supposed to happen inside the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. If you have read Brown's novels, you already know what to expect next, so let us not spill the beans any further. Published by Random House, the cost of the Kindle edition is ₹236. The last book in this category is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, 4.5 stars on Amazon, 4.1 on Goodreads, number 2 bestseller in thrillers and suspense, number 3 bestseller in mysteries, Goodreads Choice 2019 winner. The Silent Patient is a shocking psychological thriller of a woman's act of violence against her husband and of the therapist obsessed with uncovering her motive.
Alicia Berenson's life is seemingly perfect.
A famous painter, married to an in-demand fashion photographer, she lives in a grand house with big windows overlooking a park in one of London's most desirable areas. One evening, her husband, Gabriel, returns home late from a fashion shoot, and Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face and then never speaks another word. Theo Faber is a criminal psychotherapist who has waited for a long time for the opportunity to work with Alicia.
His determination to get her to talk and unravel the mystery of why she shot her husband takes him down a twisting path into his own motivations, a search for the truth that threatens to consume him.
Published by Orion, cost of Kindle edition is ₹178. With this, we have come to a close for this month's edition of the BookKey. In our last month's edition, in our trivia section, we had asked you to name the 4 Hogwarts houses. The correct answer for this is Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff and Slytherin. Now for this month's question, name the writer who penned the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel The Goldfinch. Let us know your answers in the comment section below and we will reveal the answer in our next month's edition. If you found this video informative, give us a big thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also subscribe to Endeavor Careers for the upcoming follow-up videos. We will be delighted to know if you found our book recommendations informative and interesting. See you next month with more such specially curated recommendations for you. Until then, dream, endeavor, achieve and happy reading.